The whole Liam Kumar Day effect, not really happened.
Nigel couldn't make it.
Yeah.
I rang up Mendon all, he said he could make it.
Don't dig this hole. Phil, credit to the guy, he always manages to do well what he has to. He is a shocking personality. You guys got a trophy? No.
It was pre-bit.
No, my life from Rashad Mendon.
Right, you guys, I'm a tag jack! I'm a fucking tag!
Live from LOC HQ, it's the LOC Report!
Yeah!
Back again after the first week of the NFL season, and the LOC, of course, and I'm joined again, who is not stuck in traffic today, co-host Chris Leach.
I'm not stuck in traffic, and to be quite honest with you, the M27 conditions are much better today, so, you know, I'm here, ready and raring to go. Maybe it's going to be the best show of the year. Maybe it's not. I don't know. We'll have to see how we go.
We'll see. How are you doing anyway? Good?
Yeah, that's it. Going and getting now. So, long week, hard week, but, you know. So, I'm sure like everybody else, it's a fulfilled week. But, you know, have you built 3 IKEA bits of furniture and painted 4 walls and a flat? I don't know.
I can't say I have, but the listeners out there, why don't you tweet in and let us know? Because that is the burning question on our mind.
What have you done this week? We want to know. Because then next week we can report it on the LSC report and say, look, this is what listeners have done.
Yeah, exactly. But moving to today's show, we have a good one for you today. As I just said, first week in the books, the LOC season. So we'll be recapping the week 1 games. Power rankings, of course, came out yesterday as well.
Absolutely.
So we'll take a look at them. Then we've got the preview for next week. And we also have a coach call today to treat you with. Coach Burdett will be joining us later on in the show.
I love a coach call.
Everyone loves a coach call. So lots to look forward to today. So without further ado, the league news. So, you know, last week I invited everyone to the Mine to watch the games, which isn't a lot of people now that people have basically gone their own ways.
Yeah.
But no one turned up on Sunday. Not a problem. The doors to LOC HQ are always open on Sunday, so if you're around this Sunday, come watch the games.
Please do.
Happy to have you. Bring some beers, whatnot. Exactly. Oh yeah, I should have mentioned other league news. Our first drunk podcast. We are enjoying some adult beverages today as well.
Courtesy of Budweiser and Coors Light. You know,
Sponsors of the NFL.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, by all means, please send us a few free samples if you want.
We are willing to rename our bowl.
Our bowl game. Anything for free stuff.
Exactly. Yep. So come to mind. Transactions and roster moves. So usually after the first week of the season, we see quite a flurry of moves of the players that do well in week 1.
Absolutely.
Being picked up in the bench players who perhaps did not perform as expected, or the injuries, of course. This week though, really not that case. No one really popped.
Oh no!
In the NFL this week, who wasn't already owned, of course.
No.
But we do have a few moves for you. So we've got ADRZ adding Travaris Cadet and dropping Shane Vereen. Now, what do you think of that one?
It's a bit of nothing really there.
I mean, I maybe would have. I didn't really like Shane Vereen going into the season, but I thought, you know, he figures to be the passing down back in New York. So maybe hold on to him for a week or two. I don't think anyone's running out for Travaris Cadet.
Well, no, I think so. I think maybe there's word that Vereen will probably do more. But hey, I'm interested to see how that's going to go.
Sure. Pakistan added Eric Ebron and dropped Devin Funchess. Now, Devin Funchess was obviously kind of a preseason hype candidate.
Yeah.
Didn't have a good week 1. 1 catch, I think, for 17 yards or something, while Ebron had about 40 yards or 46 yards and a touchdown. I like Ebron, but would you have made this swap this quickly? Would you give up on Funchess this quickly?
See, I think that Funchess has got a lot to prove, but also he's got a lot of positives in his locker as well. You know, big guy, fast, his catching ability is great, but also he's in one of the most high charge offenses in the NFL.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whilst Eric Ebron, maybe not quite so much.
Yes. But
then again, there's not too many outlets for Detroit to throw to now. So I think that might well be the sway for Pat. But it'd be interesting to see if that'll work. And now I know that Devin Funchess is on.
You'll be right there snapping him up. Oh, there we go. So the Tugfarts added Bolt D. Well, have we heard that before?
Well,
Baltimore Ravens D and drop Los Angeles Rams after their pitiful display against the Niners.
Yes, indeed, and yes, one of the Well, we have heard this before. Tuck Fard's favourite D, so...
Exactly. Cash for Gold added Chris Hogan and dropped Laquan Treadwell. Chris Hogan had a good week 1 against Arizona with Jimmy Garoppolo under centre. Tom's Tyrants added Jason Witten and dropped Zach Miller. Cash for Gold added Nelson Aguilar and dropped JJ Nelson, really bolstering their wide receiver depth there, along with Hogan. And Tom's Tyrants added Chris Thompson and dropped Rob Kelly. So we were not kidding when we said there was not much interesting stuff going on with the transactions this week.
That isn't going to be the most interesting one of the year.
No, but there are some interesting injury news. So for Tom's Tyrants, Chris Ivory surprisingly ended up in hospital last week, Friday, Saturday, with a general medical issue. Was the word, whatever that means.
Well,
so he did not play, but he was released from hospital, I think, yesterday. Right. However, his status is still unclear for Sunday. We'll have to see how that goes.
Oh dear.
And Tyler Eifert, again, he's going to be out with that injury he's been dealing with for a while.
Yep.
The Tuck Fards, Brandon Marshall had a hip issue going into week 1, but he played, had no setbacks. He was a full participant, plays tomorrow night, so that's good to hear.
Yeah.
So he'll be back. Rob Gronkowski obviously missed week 1 as well with his hamstring that really came out of nowhere. His status is unclear, unfortunately. I have no update. Injuries get issued today. I haven't had time before the show to really look since this afternoon, so I haven't seen any update on him.
We shall try. We shall find out. It's in this section if we're a bit of research.
You can take a look while I do the rest. So he's questionable at best, I would say, at the moment. While Devontae Parker also dealing with hamstring injuries, both hamstrings. He should be back. He started to practice near the end of last week, so he should be back. Moving on to Burdett, Sammy Watkins obviously had that off-season foot surgery, and he kind of had, I wouldn't say a setback in week 1, but he was dealing with some pain and discomfort in that foot. There were rumours on Monday that he could be, in fact, shut down for the season, and that quickly backtracked. He's saying he'll be ready to play Thursday, so something to monitor there. I think he'll probably play Thursday, but we'll just have to see how he gets on. Risk of re-injury, perhaps. A lot of people with that particular foot surgery have a problem.
Of course.
Moving on to bare necessities, Zach Ertz dealing with a displaced rib. Not the nicest sounding of injuries. He is week to week. I would say very unlikely to play Sunday.
Yeah.
And maybe not for a few weeks. This is something he cannot play, if you've ever heard. Have you got an update on Gronkowski?
Gronk, yes, absolutely, yes. Breaking news, Gronk has returned to practice today.
Limited, I assume?
Absolutely,
yeah.
But what they say is that the Patriots want Gronkowski on the field, and if he can go Sunday, then he will.
Fantastic. So I would take that as Gronk sounding on the better side of questionable, which now obviously there is only 2 tags, questionable and doubtful, so I would say he's probably good to go.
I think so.
Keenan Allen was a big injury outcome of week 1. The bunch, unfortunately, have lost their star wide receiver for the season due to a torn ACL. What's the impact for the bunch?
Well, it's a key injury there. Keenan Allen's a very, very good, it's a decent receiver.
He was on course for a nice day too.
Absolutely right. In that offense as well, he's heavily targeted, of course. Judging by their week 1 performance, to be quite honest with you, they've got a lot of depth.
Yeah, Willie Snead on the bench. He has another receiver. I can't quite remember, but yeah,
that's
right.
Options. Exactly that. So I think there's ready-made replacements. But when you score 122 points in week 1 without your arguably number 1 receiver, your number 2 receiver,
you drafted him as number 2. He has
behind Brown.
Yeah,
but say very decent receiver. Nonetheless. I don't think it's going to make too much of a difference, especially when you've got Antonio Brown in your team.
For sure. So what else we got? The Dream Team, Julio Jones I think it was a sprained his ankle. He rolled it again in Sunday's game. He played through it. He was fine. But this is kind of something to monitor. Obviously when you get an injury and you keep re-injuring it, it won't necessarily heal properly. So something to monitor going forward. But I have absolutely full confidence he'll play this weekend. Yep. Cash for Gold, Kenneth Dixon, his status is still unclear, but my news from a week ago was that he'll probably miss a few weeks before coming back. Right. And finally, Iknan, he had a considerable ankle sprain on Sunday as well. He played through it. There was a word earlier this week that he would perhaps not be able to play on Sunday, but at the moment it's looking like he will be limited, perhaps severely limited, but he will play.
That's a big thing, Russell Wilson.
Yeah, he had a poor game for Ignan, and it kind of cost him in week 1, as we'll
absolutely.
get to.
So his running game is a big part of his game as well. So with an ankle straight, it's very, very difficult to see.
Especially behind a bad offensive line.
Well, absolutely, yeah.
And finally, Jamal Charles, again for Ignan, obviously trying to come back from that ACL tear. He's looking doubtful at best, I would say, to come back. And even if he does, he's almost surely on a snap count.
Yeah.
So next, we'll get to the week 1 recap. I'm just going to turn a light on because it's getting
That's
dark.
it. That's all right. It's good. We're on recap and cut.
So week 1 recap. So in week 1 we had some really good games in the NFC. 2 came down to less than 10 points between the teams, and one team went over 140 points. We have the customary team going over 100 and still losing.
Yeah.
So it was another great week in the LFC. So we'll start off with last week's marquee matchup. Which I think on the show we said was Ignan v Tom's Tyrants.
Absolutely.
And lived up to the billing. It was a good game. Tom's Tyrants were ahead for most of the game. Ignan were kind of in the hunt though, like they might be able to pip it. But ultimately, Tom's Tyrants just outlasted their opponent 117-98. What are your takes on this game?
Well, and you're right. It's last year's runners-up versus a perennial winner of the LOC. Let's not forget. Here, I think that the scoreboard is flattered somewhat by Andrew Luck's performance for Tom's Tyrants. Yeah,
43 points.
Yeah, 4 touchdowns. Really, really good performance. Say 43.5 points. You really cannot beat
it was
that,
over
really.
a third of his team's points. Let's get that.
Exactly. And you look down the list here. Miller, 11, not bad.
Didn't get a touchdown, so that's decent going forward.
Exactly.
Benjamin had a good day against a tough defense too.
Yeah, that's it. Absolutely. Lacey did okay, albeit at Jacksonville. Didn't score a touchdown though, so as you say, not bad along the ground.
I mean, the only player other than Luck to score a touchdown was Kelvin Benjamin.
Yeah.
So
that's it. Says it all. His receiving core there. You look at it. Benjamin scored. He scored 15 points, but Landry and Miller, as well as Deshaun Jackson as well, maybe not putting together the performance you necessarily want. Helped out by the Eagles D though, 15 points.
Absolutely.
So you come up trumps. So yes, a good performance there. Across the other side of the board, if this is a tale of 2 quarterbacks, if Luck's done exceptionally well this week, Russell Wilson really hasn't done exceptionally well. 13.9.
Not the best game. Not a killer, but definitely not winning you any weeks alone.
No, absolutely right. And looking down the list, we're looking McCoy, solid week, including the touchdown. Blunt,
backup running back starting for Jamal Charles as well.
That's it.
11 points, good day against the tough D as well.
Yes, absolutely. Larry.
The real story of Ignan.
That's it. He turns out 20 points straight down the board. Hey, worth his draft pick. Alshon Jeffrey. Hey, people said he was going to be injured. People said he was going to be.
Yeah, when he's on the field, no one's questioning his number 1 receiver ability.
Absolutely.
It's just when he's on the field.
Yes, that's it. I'd say 105 yards and no touchdown. Represents good value, I think. But from there on down, Fleener. A lot was said about him before the beginning of the season. Said New Orleans likes to use tight end, but
hasn't been on the same page as Drew Brees.
No,
reports on.
Absolutely. So a frustrating day for him. I mean, 6 yards receiving, man. That's not so good.
In a really high scoring game too.
Absolutely. So it tells you a lot about his role in the offense. Maybe Frank Gore, not bad for a flex. And then we've got Gostkowski.
Special teams were strong. 22 points combined.
Yeah, absolutely. Gostkowski and the Panthers D.
24. No, 22. My maths.
Yeah, you are right. It's you can see why he's gone for Gostkowski as a kicker again, because 13 points represents very good value. But the difference here is quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And Andrew Luck's had a worldy game in the first week, so I think that that's the difference. And unfortunately for Ignan, he wants Russell Wilson to get better very, very soon.
Definitely. Moving on to our next game here, it's Gridiron Gang gets ADRZ. So the current champion going off in his first game of the season against Gridiron Gang, who obviously missed out on the playoffs for the second year in a row with a good 8-6 record.
Yeah.
Coming into this one, it was tipped to be a close game. 30 minutes before kickoff, Gridiron Gang dropped the Minnesota Vikings defense because I saw a report that one of their starting corners was out. So I was like, okay, screw that.
Yep.
And got Packers. Minnesota went on to get 2 defensive touchdowns among other things, and the Packers D got a lowly 6 points. So I was kicking myself heading into Sunday night. It was a close game, 93 to, I think it was 78. So it was a close one. ADRZ had Jordan Reed to go, but Jordan Reed didn't come up trumps, and the final score was 93 to 85.
There you go. And tight again, say not much in it. It's a classic kind of LOC matchup here. Let's do some comparison here. So there's not a great deal amongst the quarterbacks. Derek Carr, it's turned into a pretty solid fantasy asset. Who knew? Any Oakland quarterback.
Last season, he looked good, and people tipped him to be a QB1 this season.
Yeah, well, that's it, and so it has proved so far. We then go to running backs. David Johnson, a solid week for Gridiron Gang. Doug Martin again chipping in with yardage, but no touchdowns. On the other side of the board, Devonta Freeman. Looking like a ghost of last year.
Looks like he'll be in a committee as well.
That's it. Maybe not justified a first round draft pick yet, but
I think was he first or second?
Second.
He was on the turn because ADRZ had
yeah.
He was the second, but the first pick.
Very close, but yes, and him and Giovanni Bernard, that looks a pretty shaky foundation to build on. Mm-hmm. We go down to receivers now. I'll say it again. There is a clear difference between the two teams here. Say Decker and Cobb combining. For about 17 points. Whilst on the other side of the board,
it was all AJ Green.
That's it, absolutely. That's it. And when you
burned Revis, if you watched the game on Sunday, absolutely molested him.
That's it, and it's not it's not hard. Well, it's very difficult to do that, I suppose. It's not.
In his younger days, he's kind of Revis Island, isn't it? Revis Island is becoming more of a Revis. I don't know.
It's a retirement home now.
Yeah.
It's a sandals resort. Surely not. But yeah, AJ Green on the other side of the ball, extremely good performance there, but wasn't quite enough to save him, and maybe this is the reason why. Heading on down, Antonio Gates.
2 points.
2 points. Man, that is so good. Jordan Reed, 6 points. Not a lot on the tight ends, not a lot to choose from there. Flex, looking at Marvin Jones, yardage, not bad yardage, not a lot of respect, but Mohamed Sanu. He's rejuvenated. He's a rejuvenated
Found
man.
a home in Atlanta.
Yeah, very much so. So I like the value of that.
I think the real story here, though, is ADLC's bench. Now, I'm not going to criticize him about it because I think the options that did well on his bench, you weren't necessarily going to play.
No.
But one really stands out for me here. Theo Riddick, 22.8 points. He supposedly thought of starting him, would have won him the week.
Yep.
Can't criticize him for not, but the bench in total got 62 points.
Yeah, man, I say absolutely insane. And considering that is only 23 points on his overall figure, it tells you a lot about where the downfall is. Hey, had either Freeman or Bernard scored,
totally different game.
Yeah, absolutely right. But I think that's the thing with ADRZ. They got to look at that and look at the running back. Say, I know what weak running backs are like, and see that as a weakness.
Yep, definitely the weakness, as I pointed out after the draft as well.
Yeah.
So the current champ starts out the season with a loss, as did the runner-up. So the 2 finalists last year, not off to a great start.
No, absolutely.
Moving on to our next game here, we have the Bunch against Forge Flyers. Obviously, the unretired coach of last season looked to improve on a pretty decent campaign, while obviously Forge Flyers looking to turn over a new leaf. Unfortunately, that new leaf did not get turned over this week as they lost 122 to 80.
Yes, there's a massive difference here. I mean, say that's a huge losing figure. The Bunch had some quite brilliant, outstanding individual performances, to be quite honest with you. Not a shout out, I would say Ryan Fitzpatrick seemingly found a home.
Against Cincinnati, 19 points, you'll take that.
Yeah, absolutely right. Say some good figures there. Shame about the interception, but hey, that's not so bad. But then we look down the board and say there's the two guys who played on
Monday night.
Monday night, yes. Hyde and Brown, well, they've got some big numbers here.
45 points between them.
Yeah, that's it, and that's the winning figure. Say those two guys have really changed the game here. Say Carlos Hyde. Say he was looking great last season. He was looking to be on for a good season. Sadly, he got injured. Then kind of his season petered out. And Antonio Brown, everyone knows his quality. So you'd expect that kind of number.
His twerking's not bad either.
Well, let's say no more. But that's the key individual. But it also in other areas have done very well too. I like the fact that the Seahawks D is worth to justify the
24
draft
points in the special teams.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly that. And say it's an underrated part of fantasy special teams.
Oh, absolutely.
You really got to look at that.
It's the most random. No one's denying that, but it can win you a week.
It can. That's it. And especially when you've got a unit that can hold teams to 10 points and 5 sacks. That represents pretty good value, I think. On the other side of the board, well, what can you say? No one really turned up.
That's probably what you can say.
Yeah, that's it. Cam did okay. Nice and solid week for a quarterback. DeMarco Murray, to be fair to him, for a 5th rounder, 6th rounder. I can't remember which I picked him now. But say that represents pretty good value from where he's at. Shame about the fumble, but hey, 17.7 points, good amount. And then we went down the board from there. AP, 3 points.
No one else goes double digits.
Geordie, 9 points. T.Y. Hilton, 7.9 points. Danny Walker, Floyd, they're all yardage. There's no scoring here. So touchdowns do win you games. And I think that if some of these guys on that team can get, especially the receivers, can get in the eye of the QB and get some touchdowns, then a completely different story is being told. But nevertheless, a great win for the bunch, and say 122 points in week 1. That sets out a bit of stall.
Off to a good start.
Yeah.
Sure. Our next game here is Burdett against Pakistan. Pakistan, obviously in their 2nd season as a head coach.
Indeed.
And entering this one, I believe they were 1-0 against Burdett. So Ollie had never won against them. But that changed this week in a close game, 90-86.
Very tight, and there's not a lot of holes you can pick here. I must admit, though, the introduction of Winston to Pakistan, I mean, that's a good pickup.
33 points accounted for well over a third and a half of that team.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be fair, there's not a lot else in that team.
Tom Gurley had a disappointing week, could have won it for them. They were down by 8, I think, entering Monday night. And came up with 4.
Didn't really do a great deal. And it's funny because he was very well fancied after the draft that this would be the team that could really push on. But as yet, maybe that hasn't come about. I think that score is flattering as well, because if Winston just didn't have that kind of game, then we'd have been talking about a 60-point, maybe even less game or week for Pakistan, and especially when you see the bench options as well.
A few options, but no one I think you can really rely on.
No, so even Melvin Gordon, you can say that you could put him in, but looking at the matchups, maybe that would have been wise to put him in rather than Stewart. But these things happen, so I wouldn't. If I was Pat, I wouldn't dwell on that. On the other side, well, Ollie's been bailed out here, I'm afraid. Tyrod Taylor, 5 points, man. That is a shocker for a QB. Ingram, say, a lot of yards on the ground, but not a lot of touchdowns. And then we come to the Kansas City offense. Here we go.
Running through a running back.
Yes.
Literally and figuratively.
Absolutely. Who needs Jamal Charles? Who needs him when you've got a system?
Exactly.
So, yeah, 25 points from one player, plus... Again, Dan Bay, 17 points for a kicker. Man, that's just that's otherworldly. Plus, Ryan Matthews seems to have woken up in Philly as well. It seems to have got.
Odell Beckham didn't fire this week as well as the quarterback.
That's it. It doesn't help. And Sammy Watkins, well, he's got his own issues. So, yeah, I think here there's an element of luck on both sides, and the scoreboard does rather get flattered by with some big games from big players. Whether or not they can continue that, I'm not so sure.
We'll see. Moving on to our next game here, we have the Tugfards against Cash for Gold. Cash for Gold, obviously playing in their first game in the LOC, our new rookie head coach of the season, going up against a founding team, a seasoned veteran of 7 years of the LOC.
Absolutely.
Always going to be a tough one in the Tugfards. Winningest coach in LOC history currently. But, you know, in week one, I think the Tugfards were 3-3. Then they're not, 3-4 or something like that in week one. They're not necessarily the strongest team in week one. Struggles against the young teams as well. We've seen Pakistan beat them. We've seen the Rural QB beat them in the Corona bonus.
Yeah.
And that trend continued here today when they lost to Cash for Gold, 108-93.
Yeah, absolutely. And say it's a hard one for Phil to take here, but at the same time, you have to admire the fact that his team of his ragtag bunch of team rather have scrambled their way to 93 points against a Cash for Gold team who appears to be quite well balanced, which is obviously where you want to be for a starting team. So let's have a look at the breakdown, shall we? Quarterbacks, very similar. Very, very similar days. Roethlisberger scoring 3 touchdowns. Not as much.
Just got 3-2. One was rushing.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's not a lot that can be said there. I think that's going to be seen across the course of the year. Roethlisberger's got a lot of good assets in his team. Rodgers, of course, is a quality quarterback.
Yeah.
Not to say that Roethlisberger isn't, but yeah, maybe not on the same level. But we look down the list here. Running backs, again, very similar. 10-12 points combined scored for the Tugfards. Arian Foster managed to get somehow to 10 points, despite the fact that he's playing against the Seattle D, which is, hey, fair play to the guy, as well as TJ Yeldon. And then we've got on the other side Langford and Elliott. That's much like a young team. It's a young running back pairing as well.
Very young team, in fact. They've got Murray Cooper and Doug Baldwin as well. So
yes,
quite young team.
Absolutely. So again, not a lot of difference there. Going to the receivers, Crabtree, Marshall, and Anquan Bolden. Well, now playing Anquan Bolden didn't do a great deal. Let's be quite honest, but neither did Brandon Marshall. But Michael Crabtree again going in there with a solid 10 points. But Baldwin and Cooper combining for 30 points, just 31 points, just under 31 points between them. That's a really good value from that team, and you can see that. I think that's where the difference is there.
Yeah, definitely.
Going down the list a little bit more, there's not a lot else that you can really see. Special teams and tight ends, not a great. Austin Safarian Jenkins did score though. Yeah,
we all criticised him, and one play made the play look smart.
That's it. And Dwayne Allen looks very good. In the Indy offense.
Yeah, obviously, let's not forget Tugfards without Rob Gronkowski for the first week as well.
Absolutely. And shame he can't play 2 tight ends because I think Dwayne Allen's going to look like a receiver in that.
Definitely.
In there.
Definitely.
But, good for Cash for Gold, and they look very balanced, and I like that.
Sure. Our final game here, and we'll get on to the power rankings and the reaction of that. We have the Dream Team against Bare Necessities, which was touted as a possible marquee matchup heading into the week, and probably in hindsight was the marquee matchup. It was a barnstorm.
Huge.
Dream Teams obviously made playoffs 3 years in a row. Bare Necessities made the playoffs last year as well, I believe. Bare Necessities continued the winning trend here with the high scoring point total of the week, 146 to 112.
I see, absolutely. You look at it here, and it is an absolute barnstorm. You're right. 258 points between them, and that's that doesn't come around in week 1 very often. Now, Bare Necessities here, we're talking about balance on teams. Now, I like it here. Now, it might be a little bit bottom heavy, and let's say we might have had a few one-off performances here. Yeah, D'Angelo Williams won't be scored like that forever.
They've got Le'Veon Bell, though. Let's not forget.
This is true. And maybe one of them will, but at the same
Brandon
time,
Cooks as well obviously went for that 98-yard touchdown.
Exactly. But you look here, and you've got 3 players that have hit 20s, of which 2 of them in the high 20s. Williams and Cooks. Yes, Cooks is helped by the massive touch, but you've got to be there to score. So you can't really complain. Eli Manning, you know what's coming with him. Matt Forte for the Jets. No touchdowns and
150 yards.
Yeah, that's it. 15 points, 15.5 points, 150 yards. That represents very, very good value indeed.
Definitely.
And you can. It's maybe a freak week. 35 points on the bench. Didn't leave a great deal on there. Not more you can say. But the core of the team, quarterback, running back and receivers looks tight. On the other side,
Clear different picture on the dream team.
Yes, very much so. It's all QB there. It's all QB.
That's it. It's all 2 players though.
Well, that's it. Yes, okay. CJ Anderson somehow woke up from his 1 year slumber, which is good. Shame it was with me last year. Never mind.
Maybe you have an anti-Phil effect, whereas Phil can play anyone and get points. Maybe you can play anyone and prevent them from getting
quite possibly. That's it. They won't have a good year. So it is quite possible. But yes, Drew Brees had another ungodly week. But then again, you'd expect it from a player of his class, especially when it really is his offense. Let's be quite honest.
Anderson, Murray, really the only 2 other decent players. Julio Jones had an okay week as well. But
Dez didn't turn up. Julio, one touchdown. You expect that from someone who's been picked in the first round. But other than that, again, as you say, not a lot of quality there.
Yeah.
And bailed out by a big performance by Breeze.
Definitely. But I expect that to kind of spread through the weeks and Dream Team to still have a decent season. Which brings us to the power rankings. In week 1, before week 1, I put out my power rankings, and I'm proud to say there haven't been too much movers, which means I did a pretty good job of evaluating week 1.
That's good.
There are a few movers, so we'll get to that. So Ben SSDs jumps up to top spot, understandably, from 5th. So they're really pretty high in the first place. Thomas Torrance holds at 2, as does the Dream Team at 3. The Bunch making the biggest climb of the week. They go from 11 to 4. Ickenham falls from 1 to 5 after their okay week. Bedene's Gridiron Gang and Fortifies all hold at 6, 7, and 8. Cash for Gold climbs up 1 spot from 10 to 9. Tugfarts climbs up 2 from 12 to 10. Pakistan, they were the biggest faller of the week. They dropped from 4 to 11. And finally, ADLZ dropping from 9 to 12. What do you think of the power rankings?
I think it's quite fair. I mean, it represents week one well. As we said before, I think the Dream Team may be a little bit overpriced at this point, simply because we've seen 112 points, but 112 points from some seriously, not average, but inconsistent
They're going to
players.
have big and bad weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that maybe the Dream Team are there because we see some of the players having inconsistent weeks at the moment. Those who had great weeks will fall, and those who didn't have so good weeks will rise. Yeah. So maybe that's it. But other than that, I think that it's a fair representation of week 1. ADRZ in 12th. I mean, that's a real fall from grace. But hey, they're
already 9th as well.
That's it. The only way is up, man. So that's it. In Cash for Gold, maybe a bit unlucky to end up 9th with a win. But other than that, I think everyone will have their own reaction.
Yep, absolutely. That's the great thing about the power rankings. Everyone's going to do it differently.
Yes.
So some quick notes from week 1 then. Gridiron Gang are now 4-3 against ADLZ. Ben SSD is now 6-5 against the Dream Team all time. Bedenes gets their first win against Pakistan. That's now 1-1. The Bunch.
Without Brady.
Currently the Bunch gets their first win against you, Chris. Now they're 1-2 against you.
Huge.
Thomas Torrance is now 6-4 against Ickenham with their winning. Coach Gardner, first win of their career. Currently the highest win percentage in the LOC.
Yes. Kick that one out.
against the top parts. And the other thing of note here, Coach Allen recorded his 10th loss last weekend. So
there you go. Maybe he's the quickest to 10. Who knows?
Yes.
I like it.
So now we get to the week 1 preview, and we're gonna have to pick a marquee matchup here. So there's a few to choose. We have Gridiron Gang against Thomas Tyrants, Tugfards against Fortifies, Bananas against ADLZ, Ben Assisties against the Bunch, Dream Team against Pakistan, and Cash for Gold against Ignan. Which is your marquee matchup?
Well, my marquee matchup this week, folks, has to be Gridiron Gang versus Thomas Tyrants. It has to be.
A Corona Bowl 3, 2 historically good teams.
Yep.
3 Corona Bowls between them.
That's it. What else would you want?
Exactly.
No, but to be quite honest, yeah, absolutely. I'm with you on that. And say, with this here, Gridiron Gang Thomas Tyrants, it always produces good games. 2 teams that have been in the league a long time, 2 coaches that know the NFL well, and 2 teams that seemingly have got their roots dug in this year. So yes, this week's marquee matchup is Gridiron Gang versus Thomas Tyrants.
And Gridiron Gang is 3-5 against Thomas Tyrants all time. Obviously 4 Corona Bowl appearances between them. So one of these two teams has appeared in half of all Corona Bowls. So lineup changes for you this week. So Gridiron Gang brings Jeremy Macklin into the flex in favour of Marvin Jones, otherwise unchanged. On Tom's Tyrant's side of the ball, they look unchanged as well at the moment, but they will have Jason Witten in at tight end for them, who they just picked up off free agency.
Yep.
Projections currently have this one in a landslide. 100 points for Gridiron Gang, so not too high, but quite a low projection for Tom's Tyrants. What do you make of this game?
62 points for Tom's Tyrants, yeah, absolutely. I think the tight end makes a difference, but it doesn't make that much of a difference. Let's call it 8 points, so let's call it 100 to 70. Yeah, I'm looking down here. Andrew Luck really isn't projected very highly here.
Playing against Denver, understandable, but you think he'd probably outscore 12 points.
Yes, you'd like to think so. And I think that may be the reason why it's a little bit lower, because you see here Derek Carr against Atlanta, projected 27 points.
Jimmy Swenson did just go off for about 33.
This is true. But 27 points, I say, can he keep it up? I say 24 points in week 1, 27 points in week 2 isn't what we it's expected. It wouldn't be a surprise if it did happen, but it'd be interesting to see. Down the board a little bit, we're looking at Matt Prater, 12 points. One for a kicker. Now. Maybe I'm not quite sure about that. But what I do like here... and as I close it down, what I do like here is the projections of David Johnson. There we go again. They expect him to get 15 points. So I think that's probably about right. And Doug Martin against Arizona, 9 points. Those are the 3 highest. On the other side, Kelvin Benjamin projected for a good week against San Francisco.
Understandable.
Quite understandable. But you'd like to think that the San Francisco D might not lock out anybody.
So, who are you taking in this game?
Oh man, it's going to be a tough one, and I think it's going to be quite close. But again, just simply because I think the projections on Tom's Tyrants are a little bit lower than the
Agreed.
It's going to be difficult, and I think that Tom's Tyrants may have more match winners, but haven't got as favourable matchups. So I'm going for Gridiron Gang.
I'm also going for Gridiron Gang.
How would I guess?
Surprise, right? Yeah, I completely agree. Tom Starrent's projection is ridiculously low. This team and this coach is far too talented for a projection that low. They'll definitely outscore that. But I do see Gridiron Gang, as you say, having a better week with slightly better matchups and getting the win. So we'll go on to our next game here. We have the Tuck Floods against Forge Flyers. So 2 teams start searching for their first win.
Absolutely.
So obviously the loser of this team will be 0-2. Changes in the lineup here. So the Tuck Fards, they bring Thomas Rawls in to start over who are they starting him over? TJ Yoden. In the flex, they're bringing Alan Hearns in for Anquan Bolden. And they've obviously got Ravens D now starting at defense.
Yep.
Meanwhile, on Forge Fire side of the ball,
completely unchanged.
So the history of this matchup, the Tuck Fards are 6-4 against Forge Fires all time. So not
right.
one-sided, really. What are your takes on this game? The projection is 103 to 68 in favour of you, Chris.
I tell you what, if that is the case and then that comes off, then I'll be quite pleased with that. I think in terms of strength of team, I think there's absolutely no question that Forge Flyers are stronger, especially in key areas. You know, my key areas say QB, either one of the running backs, and at least 2 of the receivers, and I think there, Forge Flyers may have the upper hand. If you look at the Tuck Fards, say Roethlisberger, undoubtedly a quality quarterback, and he's probably going to be what he's going to be relying on for points this week. Aaron Foster at New England, tough matchup. Thomas Rawls against LA, maybe not such a tough matchup, but he's got a lot to prove.
Still not the full-time starter as well.
No, absolutely, and that also a little bit of a gamble. So I think the projection of 10 points against LA may be a little bit high. Crabtree against Atlanta, as we saw, the matchup's good. Time for points, but is it Cooper week? I hope so. Brandon Marshall coming off an injury. Dwayne Allen against Denver. Are they going to shut him down? You'd like to think so. Especially, are they going to shut the QB down as well? And that's where his service is going to come from. Alan Hearns in for Anquan Bolden. To be fair, is a bit of a no-brainer. there's not a lot in it, but say. And then you've
better
got,
matchup too.
Yeah, and then special teams, nothing to write home about. Maybe Ravens versus the Cleveland Browns. Maybe. But we'll see. But on the other side, say Cam versus San Francisco. I love that.
Everyone loves that.
I love that.
Unless you're Jeff Fisher.
Indeed. Say Murray and Peterson again. Should have much better weeks. You'd like to think that Peterson would rebound this week, but against Green Bay, maybe a little bit more difficult. I don't know.
Especially with the QB problem right there.
It is, and so I think until Sam Bradford gets up to speed, we're not going to see the best of AP yet. But it's a long game, so we'll see how we go. Nelson and Hilton, say road games for them. Hilton's got a lot to prove for me. And then we've got Walker against Detroit, nothing to write home about. And then Michael Floyd versus Tampa Bay, which, I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
One thing I do think is, though, the 103 points has come from the fact that my kicker, Brandon McManus, here, has got 11 points. I'm not sure. If he gets to 11 points, I'll love it.
Against Indy, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Who are you taking in this game?
I think that, as I said before, I think Forge Flyers.
Yeah.
Not to be biased, but say Forge Fly do have the more complete package. I think the Tampa Bay did struggle to 93 points last week, and maybe their ceiling's about that. If they get to 100 points, I think they'd be really pleased with that.
Yeah.
I know what that's like. But say Forge Fly's just got more upside, and that's why they're going to win.
Yeah. So while I do think you are kind of the Jeff Fisher of the LSC, I hate to say it, losing as coach in LSC history, Jeff Fisher's nearly that. The one good season way back when. That all being said, I have more confidence in you than I do Jeff Fisher.
Well, I'm glad you say so.
Yeah, and Tuckfards, like you said, I think, look, I'm not going to bash this roster. We all know Phil manages to cobble together points regardless of the roster. He's a maven in that regard. But I do agree with your comments. I don't think everyone's going to fire at once to lead to those really great Tuckfards weeks. We saw, just talking factor, since we've become a 12-team league, Tuckfards haven't been as magical, haven't been able to channel, their play anyone strategy. Maybe that's because the roster's in it, I don't know. But again, I agree. They're going to struggle to have those big weeks that they used to.
Yeah.
Well, I do see a lot of potential on your side, so I'm going to pick Forge Flyers.
Forge Flyers, that's it. That's
2-0.
a bold move.
So we go to our next one here, and it is Burdett against ADRZ. A good game, I think. Good game. Fireworks between this one. Projections currently have this one 90-84, so it's predicted to be quite close. Changes in the roster for Bedetonators. Rashad Jennings comes into the starting lineup over Mark Ingram. Who else has changed? Julius Thomas comes in at tight end for Jared Cook. And I think that's unchanged. On ADRZ side of the ball, Theo Riddick comes into the starting running back after his big game. And Giovanni Bernal goes to the bench. And other than that, they have not changed. So the stat in this one is Bedetonators are actually 7-3 all time against ADRZ. So history's on Bedetonators' side here. One team searching for their first win, the other trying to go 2-0. What do you think?
I think both teams here, so as we said before on the recap, they've solved the problems of their previous week. Burdett has brought in Carson Palmer at QB rather than Tyrod. I think that's probably the right thing to do. On the other side, ADRZ have, I wouldn't say solved their running back problem, but they've certainly given themselves a half chance. Both teams, I think, are very, very even, and that's what the projections also suggest as well. I think the Bedetonators maybe have more match winners, though. And we've seen it as ADRZ last week were carried by 2 or 3 players.
Yeah.
Their problem with running backs will still persist, I think. Whilst at the same time, we're going to have Bedetonators going to have a much better day of it, especially if they can get some of their receivers firing.
Yeah, I agree. Who you got in this game?
I have Bedetonators to win this game.
I think I'd agree. Like you said, I think Bedetonators' roster is kind of stronger in the starting core. It's more spread. They're going to get points from different areas each week. Whereas Andy Dalton, Red Zone, as you say, they are, at the moment, with their running backs in flux, they are reliant on a few players, and I'm not sure they'll have enough firepower to beat Bedetonators. So I'm picking them too. Our next game here, bare necessity against the bunch. Experience versus relatively inexperienced, some retiring. Both these teams are 1-0, so one of these teams will be 2-0 after this week. Projections currently have this one 98-90, so another close one. Changes for bare necessities. I think Martellus Bennett comes into the starting lineup. Yep, he will, because Zach Ertz obviously had that displaced rib.
Yep.
Amir Abdullah comes into the flex for Dante Moncrief as well. On the Bunches side of the ball, they're currently unchanged, currently starting Keenan Allen, so their projection will go up when they move him to the bench. History of this matchup, I believe, is actually in the Bunches' favour. They are 2-1 against bare necessities all time. What do you make of this game?
Right, yes, of course. I really do think that these two teams, they're going to be high scoring again. So their week 1 exploits may be a little bit more difficult to get hold of, but at the same time, you've got to think that because they're two very, very well balanced teams, that they will be getting to those heights again. Whether or not Hyde and Brown can maybe get to the same lengths, Hyde versus the Carolina Panthers D is good, especially in Carolina as well, maybe a bit difficult, but bare necessities do have, I think, the slightly better matchups, and also the bunch needs to replace Keenan Allen with somebody as well. Willie Snead's
probably the next man up.
I think so. Maybe his week 1 numbers may be a bit more difficult to get to again, but still a very capable receiver.
Yeah.
But not at the same level as Hopkins and Cooks on the other side. So I think the bare necessity will still will have this. It might not be as close to the projections seem at the moment, but we shall see. But it'd be interesting to see if they can get some seriously high-powered scoring going again.
Yeah, I'm going to take bare necessities as well. You said it pretty well. I think they're pretty strong throughout. It's by the top of the power rankings.
Yeah.
They'll get their points in a week. Whereas the bunch, they had a very good week 1. Nothing to take that away from them. The loss of Keenan Allen hurts, but as we saw in week 1, it didn't really impact them all that much.
No.
That being said, you're right. Some players did go above and beyond to bring home the W in week 1. I still think they're a bit of a roster in flux. I think the dust will settle. They're going to be in store for good and bad weeks. Could be a good week. I'm not saying it won't, but I think bare necessity is more likely to pull out the bag.
Absolutely.
So moving on to our next game here, we have the Dream Team against Pakistan. So again, both these teams are 0-1. One will be 0-2. Still searching for their first win. Projections currently have it 104-91 in Pakistan's favour. The Dream Team, they have put Jordan Matthews in the flex over Justin Forsett, while Pakistan starting Philip Rivers over Jameis Winston, and Melvin Gordon in the flex over John Brown. History of this matchup, the Dream Team is 1-0 all time against Pats. These teams have only met once. What do you think of this?
I don't think it's wise for Pakistan to take out his arguably his best player in week 1.
Rivers was a lot worse without last season. We definitely saw that. And I know Winston's got a tough matchup against the Cardinals, but we just saw Jimmy Garoppolo have a decent game against them.
Exactly, and that's very interesting because you look at that and throwing the dice at this point, especially when you maybe have a tried and tested system, and say Winston's got some decent targets around him this year.
And let's not forget, Jacksonville's defense looked pretty damn good against Aaron Rodgers last week.
Yes, they have turned out they're not the Jacksonville of the past. So you've got to think that maybe might not be so wise. But at the same time, what is wise is put Melvin Gordon in at the flex. He's trying something new.
I think Gary Barnidge gets a boost as well. Put up a goose last week, but now he's got Josh McCown back.
Whoa, just what we want.
Yeah, he averaged more points than Gronk with Josh McCown last season.
Well, there you go. That's it. So that's it. Start of the day, I think. I like that.
Not as good as Kyle Rudolph, 2012 Pro Bowl MVP.
Well, no, quite possibly not. But no, I think that bringing Winston in alongside Mike Evans gives you a bit of a double as well, especially if he's thrown that way. On the other side, say Breeze and Anderson again. Will they get to the same heights? It'd be interesting to see. I think that Breeze probably will because he seems to have.
I can see Anderson having a really good game too.
Yeah, against the Colts. Murray versus the Falcons D. I really like that matchup. That's good. And also, I like the fact that he's brought in Matthews against the Bears D as well. Not the best unit in the NFL.
No.
Olsen against San Francisco, again, another good matchup. So we're looking down here, and I think there seems to be an awful lot more that can be said for the Dream Team. Albeit the the projections don't really say it that way.
I think we're both taking Dream Team.
But I think Dream Team, yes. Unfortunately, in Pakistan's recent record, I'm not one to talk, but in either. But he did come last week.
Yeah.
I didn't.
So moving on to our last game here, we have Cash for Gold against Ignan. Cash for Gold obviously taking the sideline for only their second ever game in the LOC, while Ignan looking to bounce back from a first week loss. Projections currently have this one as a real tie game, 85-84 in Ignan's favour. Have the rosters changed? Well, let's take a look on Cash for Gold side. They have not as of yet. On Ignan's side, they also have not. So 2 unchanged rosters as of so far. Obviously, no history in this matchup. What are your takes on this game?
Well, see, I think that the projections are pretty much spot on here. There's much more to like, to be quite honest with you, about Cash for Gold. And I think Aaron Rodgers is a little bit undervalued in this matchup. Russell Wilson on the other side projected 21 points, whilst Rodgers is only 14 against the Vikings. Now, I know the Vikings had a competent week 1, but you've got to admit that you can't rely on them, and you can certainly rely on Aaron Rodgers an awful lot more. But looking down, I think that's about right. Ignan have a few players that are a bit flaky, I think. You're looking at the likes of Gore, looking at the likes of Blunt. A
Hobbled Wilson.
That's it. Indeed. But on the other side, as much as you want to say Safarian Jenkins, hopefully I want to see him do well, but I think maybe a bit overvalued.
1 catch and a touchdown last week. It's not going to happen.
That's it, absolutely. He's overvalued at 10.5 points, I think. But where the value could lie is Amari Cooper at Atlanta. Now he's not rated very highly here, only 5 points. But against the Falcons D, and say with Derek Carr firing as he is, and the Oakland offense for the first time that I can remember, and many people can remember actually firing well. I think he's on for a pretty good week here. Doug Baldwin also. But unfortunately in this matchup, for every touchdown Doug Baldwin scores, Russell Wilson scores 2. So it is rather cancelled out there. So yes, it's going to be very tight. I like Cash for Gold more. But Ignan, as we've seen on their day, with some of the talent that they have, I think can do it. But I'm on the fence. I
agree. It's going to be a real close one. I'm actually going to take Cash for Gold. I'm going to back the rookie coach for the second week in a row. I really don't like the tight ends still. I think they could do with... They've almost missed out maybe on one of the good tight ends from free agency this week. But I think they could really do with upgrading that tight end. Ignan, I still think they're in a state of flux. I do like their season-long potential when Russell Wilson gets healthy, when they get Jamal Charles back. I have no doubt they can have some great weeks and solidify themselves. I just think this week, week 2, Cash for Gold probably has the better end of it.
I agree.
So some other notes then in week 2. Coach Stubbs Sr. and Coach Barnes can tie the all-time win record if Phil loses this week.
That's
at
an
60.
incentive. So basically, if I win, then they do it, and they win.
Yeah,
that's it. Well, I got to win.
They can tie it.
Forge Flyers, everyone back him, man.
If Coach Sherwood loses, it will be his 40th regular season loss.
I like
what a stat. And if Coach Nunn can win, they will get their 20th career win.
Well, that's
regular season and all time.
That's positive.
Yeah. But now, the feature you love, we have a coach call.
Yes, we do.
And on the coach call today, we have none other than Corona Bowl 5 winner. I hope that's correct. Coach Burdett. How's it going, Coach Burdett?
Yeah, it's going good.
Good to have you on the show. I think this is your first coach call appearance?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's been going on a while. I'm surprised I haven't been given the call sooner.
Yeah, we didn't do many last season. It's a bit criminal. We apologise, but we are making amends now for the first LU support in season. Good. So, I'm sure you're as ecstatic as everyone else to have week 1 back?
Yeah, it's been a long wait.
Yep, certainly has. Good draft by you. I liked your draft. 6th in the power rankings week 1, so I put you with a pretty good team.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Yep. I've got a few things to worry about with it, but I mean, that's next week's problems.
Certainly is, and most teams in the LOC have, in a 12-team league, it's natural to have one problem here or there. So, we will talk about your week 1 matchup here. You took on Pakistan, obviously, this week. I I think you won 1 against Pat. You faced him only once last season, but you pulled out the W last week in a close one, 90-86. What were your thoughts in this game?
I mean, I thought Pat had this in the bag. I was watching Red Zone on Sunday, and every highlight just seemed to be Jameis Winston throwing the ball into the end zone.
Yeah, you're not wrong. He did do a lot, and obviously he has Mike Evans as well, so he got the doubler.
I think that was the killer moment where I realised, he's thrown it long. Who's on the end of it? Mike Evans.
Of course, always the way, isn't it? Always the way. But yes, as you say, entering the Monday night game, 90-82 at that point. Pat had Todd Gurley and John Brown to go. What were your thoughts at that point?
Well, I've been in this situation before where I needed like 10 points off 2 players, and I only just made it by about a point. So I was like, okay, if it's possible that he won't get it. I saw the New England result, and John Brown only had like 1 catch, and I was like, cool, yeah, let's see how it goes with Gurley against San Fran. And I mean, I've been watching Hard Knocks, and LA Rams don't look great off of Hard Knocks.
There's some 7-9 bullshit going on there for sure.
Yeah, I think they're delusional down there somewhere.
Yeah.
But even then, I wasn't expecting something that bad from Gurley. That was a shocker. Well, not just him, the Rams as a whole. You can't put it on him.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, it's unlucky for Pakistan. But
Definitely. But hey, you'll take it. Your first win against Pakistan, a close one, 90-86. Moving to next week. Well, before we get to next week, just a question about some of your players. So, Sammy Watkins, you had a bit of a scare with him early in the week. On Monday, it was reported he could be shut down from the season. That very quickly dialed back that he will be playing Thursday. What are your concerns with Sammy?
I mean, he's a DNP today, I've just seen, but he's taken part in the dress rehearsal yesterday, I think, so I'm not too worried. My only issue is he's going to be matched off again on Revis Island this week, which is a place where you don't really want your receiver to be, unless you've got someone like AJ Green. But I mean, Sammy Watkins is no AJ Green.
He's definitely a good player. You never know when he's going to have a blow-up week, but yeah. Especially an injured Sammy Watkins.
Yeah. So that's my issue. The Bills' offense didn't look great last week. Whether that was due to him being limited or Ravens D getting better, time will tell. But it's certainly given me a bit of a worry at the wide receiver position this week.
Sure. You've obviously got a lot of changes in your roster this week. Just when me and Chris were recapping or previewing your game this week, you've put in Palmer over Taylor, Jennings over Ingram, which we were quite surprised by, and Julius Thomas over Jared Cook. Do you want to talk through some of those roster changes?
So Palmer over Taylor is just straight up. Palmer's got a floor. He's going to get a couple of touchdowns a game just because of the receivers they have. Taylor, I can't play him after that first week. He almost lost me the week. Scoring 5 points is embarrassing. But I'm sure he'll bounce back. But I made this mistake last season of trying to stick with someone thinking they'll have a bounce back week. It didn't happen for a while and it cost me a few games. Jennings over Ingram. This is an interesting one. So I'm waiting to see whether Jamal Charles is going to play. And my logic behind Jennings is, we saw what Raiders running did against New Orleans last week.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm still toying around with that. I wouldn't read too much into that change at the moment. I've still got till Sunday for those ones. And then Thomas over Cook is another one where Thomas sprained his ankle last week. Went quite under the radar, that. But he also had one of the best weeks for a tight end where Jared Cook caught 1 pass.
That he did.
I mean, Cook did start for Green Bay, and he outsnapped Richard Rodgers, so, I mean, it's promising. Eventually, it's going to be your turn in that Green Bay offense. But I think that's just going to be me toying around with that until Sunday again.
Sure.
I think I don't mind the matchup against San Diego this week for Thomas. I mean, it's not the best, it's not the worst, so I'll see how it goes.
Sure. You're obviously facing the 0-1 Andy Dalton Red Zone this week, the current champion. How do you rate your chances this week? What do you think, ADRZ?
Looking through the teams, I quite like my chances. He's got some of the not great matchups, got some worrying spots in his lineup, but he also does have those X-Factor players which can just go off. And for example, AJ Green against Pittsburgh, anything can happen there. So I'm not looking forward to seeing red zone on that game. But yeah, I think I match up quite well. I reckon it's going to be another close one. Hopefully not as close as last week, but hopefully I can pull out the win yet again.
Sure. Right, thanks for joining us, Coach Burdett. I wish you the best of luck this week and for the rest of the season. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers. Goodbye.
Bye.
So that was the call with Coach Burdett. Thanks for listening in. Sorry, a bit of a long episode. Coach Leach, in fact, made this episode long, as you'll probably hear on his weekly recap, and has, in fact, already left us. That's why he did not appear at all on the Coach Call. How rude of him to extend the show and then not even stay for the end. He did have fish and chips to go to, and in case you're wondering, he did a lot for large haddock and chips. Tweet us in with what you think about Chris's order from the fish and chips, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.